Hello and welcome to another radtoots.com Flash animation tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to be doing something kind of cool. Basically, what the finished product is going to be is I'm going to have our mouse moving around here, and it's basically going to generate all these movie clips that are going to sort of fly off of it and float around on our screen. So the first thing I'm going to do, as usual, is I'm going to create a basic object here, and I'm just going to draw this little square and select my shape here and convert it to a movie clip, and we'll call this particle. Now once I've created my movie clip, you'll notice that it's here in the library, and since we're going to be generating these movie clips using ActionScript, we have to assign it a linkage name. So what we do is we right click on our movie clip in our library and we click this linkage button here, and I'm just going to call this particle. So since we're going to be creating these movie clips with our ActionScript, we don't really need the movie clip to be in our canvas here, so I'm just going to go delete that. So now I'm going to come up here to our first keyframe here, and this is where I'm going to be typing in our ActionScript. Now basically we're just going to use a onEnterFrame function, and this is going to run every time our root movie clip enters the frame. Now we don't want to generate a new movie clip every single frame. So what we want to do is we want to set a timer, and we'll set it to 0 initially. If we generate a movie clip on every single frame, then we're going to have 12 movie clips generated every second, and that's just going to be way too many movie clips floating around. So we're going to set a timer variable, and we're also going to set a max variable, timer max. And you can call these variables anything you want. And we'll just call that 12. So every 12 frames we are going to be creating a particle. So every time our root movie clip enters the frame, we're going to increase our timer by 1, just so we can keep track of our frames. And we're going to write an if statement. So if our timer is equal to 12, then we're going to generate a particle. And I'm just putting in a comment here because we're going to fill this in later. And once our timer hits 12, we're also going to want to reset our timer to 0. And for testing purposes, I'm going to add another variable called particle count. And this is just going to keep track of how many particles we've created here. And so every time the timer reaches 12, we generate a particle, we reset the timer, and we're going to want to increase our particle count by 1. And let's also add a function here where we trace our particle count, just so we can test it. So now if we hit Control Enter to test our movie, you'll see in our output that we're starting to generate some particles here. And that's a pretty good rate. Actually, let's increase that rate. And in order to increase our rate, we just decrease our timer max here, and let's call this 6. And instead of explicitly saying 12 here, let's just use our variable that we've set up there. So if our timer is equal to our timer max, then we're going to be generating a particle. Let's test this out again, and you can see that it's going a little bit faster now, and that's good. So then, now that we've got our timing down, let's go ahead and add our code that is going to actually create instances of our particle movie clip. So let's use a variable to sort of store the movie clip that we're creating, and we'll use the command root.attach movie. And again, we use our our linkage name, or the ID name, which we said is particle. And then our new name, we want to generate a new name for each particle, otherwise Flash is going to get confused, because each instance has to have a unique name. So we'll call it P underscore, and then we're also going to add our particle count variable to the name of our instance. So basically our first particle is going to be called P underscore 1, and then our next one will be P underscore 0, and so on and so forth. And for our depth, we're just going to use the command root get next highest depth. Now, every time we create our particle, we want it to be created where our mouse is. So once we attach this movie clip, right away we're going to want to set the x coordinate of our particle to be equal to our x mouse, which is the x coordinate of our mouse. And let's do the same thing for our y coordinate, which is going to equal our y mouse. So if we go ahead and test this, first I'm going to save it. So if we test this now, you will see that it is creating new movie clips every 6 frames. We're creating a new movie clip where our mouse is. And that's pretty much what we want to start off with. Now we're going to also want to add some motion to these particles so that it's kind of more animated. So if we come back to our code here, we're going to want to give these particles an onEnterFrame function. So the best way to do that is we say particle dot onEnterFrame equals, and we're going to create a new function that assigns various functions or things to our onEnterFrame. So for now, we'll just say do stuff, and do stuff is going to be the name of our function that we create. So our onEnterFrame function is we're assigning this do stuff function is going to be equal to our onEnterFrame function. So let's go up here and we'll create a new function called do stuff. So we type in do stuff equals function. Okay, so every time this particle enters the frame, it's going to execute whatever code I put in here. So just to illustrate this, I'm going to use the command this, because do stuff is a function of our particle. So this is referring to each of these individual particle movie clips or objects that we are creating. So if we say this dot underscore y plus equals 5, then our objects are going to start moving downwards on every time they enter the frame. So let's test this out. So there we can see the movie clips. As soon as they are created, they are assigned an onEnterFrame function, which is assigned to our do stuff function, and it does stuff. I'm just going to get rid of this this trace here because that's sort of getting in our way. So yeah, it's doing stuff, and we want it to do some more interesting stuff. So let's go and change our onEnterFrame function for our particles. So let's say we want to add some gravity to this whole situation here. I'm going to come outside of our functions here, and I'm going to create a gravity variable, and I'm just going to set that to 1. And 1 is the number that we're going to increase our y speed by every single time this enters the frame. So the first thing I want to do is I want to actually create these variables for each of our particle movie clips. And the best way to do that is to come down here. Every time we create a particle, we're also going to create the variables for it. So we'll create an x speed variable, and let's just set that x speed variable to a random number between 3 and -3. So it's creating a random number between 1 and 6, and then we're subtracting 3 from that number, which will give us a number between -3 and +3. So it's either going to be going this way or that way. And let's also set a random y speed. And we want to sort of have our particle sort of jump upwards off of our mouse. So we're going to want that number to be a negative number. So we'll generate a random number between 1 and 6, and then we'll subtract 6 from that number. So it's either going to be 0 all the way down to -6. Now we're going to come up here into our do stuff function, and instead of increasing our y by 5, actually let's work with our x coordinate here. So our x coordinate is going to have a random velocity or speed, which we called x speed. So the x coordinate of our particle object is going to increase by our random x speed down here. So we go this dot x speed. And let's test that out. You can see that our particles now have sort of a random, they're sort of moving in a random direction on the x coordinates. And that's good. Now our y speed is a little bit different. We're going to have to change our y speed, and we're going to increase that by our gravity every time the movie clip enters the frame. And then once we change the y speed based on the gravity, then we're going to change our y coordinate by our y speed. Let's test this out. We should be seeing some acceleration here. There we go. And that's starting to look kind of neat. And you can see that we're also getting a little bit of upwards jump. But it's not much of an upwards jump, so let's change that. Let's change our initial y speed to, let's say, 30, and we'll subtract 15 from that, so it's going to be anywhere from -15 to -30, I think. Let's test this out. Oh no, that's the wrong direction. We'll use 60 there. So now it's going to be anywhere from -60 to -30. Hopefully that's not too crazy. Okay, yeah, they're jumping way up there. Okay, my estimation skills are a little off today. Let's go with 10 and 20. So now it'll be anywhere from -20 to -10. That should be good. And there we go. We've got a little mouse fountain going on here. And let's play around with this a little bit. So we'll set our timer to 3, and I'm going to change my frame rate to 30, and I'm also going to change the initial x speed anywhere from let's say -8 to +8, and let's see what we come up with here. Sweet. So that's kind of what I was going for. But let's make those things spin around, because it'll just look a little more cooler. So go back to my ActionScript here, and same thing with our initial x and y speeds. We want to set initial rotation. And we'll call it ROT for short. And we'll set that to a random number between, maybe 6 and -3 and +3. Actually, let's raise that a bit. Let's go -5 and +5. And then we come up here and we set our movie clip rotation to increase by our ROT value every time it enters the frame. Well, let's test this out. And there we go. They're sort of spinning and flying. And they're spinning kind of slow. So once again, we can fine tune these values here. We can set that to 20. Or let's use the magic number 33. And 16.5. Sure. Let's go. And yeah, that's pretty awesome. I could just stare at this all day. But let's have also another little tweak. We'll make these images or our objects fade out. And yeah, feel free to play around with this technique. It's kind of neat. Now I'm going to actually add some more effects to this. I want the boxes to sort of start off as a random size, and I also want them to sort of shrink. So set another variable called size or bigness, and we'll make that anywhere between 50% and 300%. And basically this value, we're going to use it as a scale. I got that backwards here. So anywhere between 50 and 350. And if we go back up here to our onEnterFrame function, we'll set our X scale and our Y scale to we'll make it decrease by 5 every time it enters the frame. And we want our initial Y scale and our initial X scale to be equal to our bigness value. So let's see what happens there. Oh, that's kind of cool. Now I'm just sort of improvising as I go along here, so it's actually surprisingly cool. And they even seem to be rotating around a non-central point. So it also, that's another thing we could sort of play around with. So if we go to our movie clip, and we sort of move this shape here sort of off center, we're going to get even more strange effects going on here. But let's say we just wanted them to rotate around a central point, we could just center this as well. And now they're just going to be sort of rotating or spinning in place. Now, one additional thing that we need to keep in mind is that we're creating all of these particles, all of these movie clips. Now, the longer our animation is running, the more particles we're going to have on our screen. And that's going to really start to slow down after a while because we're creating all these movie clips. So what we want to do is we want our movie clips to delete themselves when they fall off the bottom of our canvas here. So if we go back to our ActionScript here, I'll show you how to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to comment out this line here, because we don't want our movie clips to fade out, so we can actually see whether or not they've been successfully deleted. So on our onEnterFrame function, we want to write an if statement. If this, which is our movie clip, underscore y, our y coordinate of that movie clip, if it goes above 400, which is the height of our canvas, we're going to want to delete this movie clip. And the command we use for that is delete movie clip. Actually, I think it's remove movie clip. And that's a function. So let's test this out. So we can see, this is our line down here. You can see that once it hits a certain line, they're disappearing. So that's exactly what we wanted to do.